This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Eben Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with our entire show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today we look at the parole board's decision on Clive Derby-Lewis and other apartheid era killers. We've got a couple of live crossings lined up for you in the next hour. We then ask a bit later how the missing 9 billion rand, yes, in student loans will be recouped. Tough question that will be. We look back at the month of January on social media, lots of top stories that went around the world. And we close today with a look at the Lobola app that had tongues wagging this whole week. I'm only worth 3 cows, I've been told. Unfortunately, Katrine is worth a lot more, but she has the news.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malan, and let's just take a look at the top stories this morning. Justice and Correctional Services Minister Michael Masuta will announce in about an hour's time whether Clive Derby-Lewis, who was the brain behind the killing of South African Communist Party Secretary General Chris Hani, will be released on medical parole. 2 other high-profile apartheid criminals, former Vlakplaas Commander Eugene de Kock and Ferdinand Barnett, will also know their fate today. Reactions have been mixed after the recommendations for parole were made earlier this week by the Medical Parole Board. The SACP remain hopeful that Masuta will not accept the recommendation.
You now lie before this committee. What would I gain out of lying, Mr. Chairman?
The Malamulele Pastors Forum and community members have expressed disappointment after police prevented them from holding a night vigil to pray for the positive response from the Municipal Demarcation Board about the demand to have their own municipality. The prayer session was organized by pastors in the area. It was meant to pray for a response from the board about the demand to have Malamulele granted a separate municipality from Thulamela. The board is expected to release its final report on Malamulele to Malamulele task team members in Polokwane today. The 24th session of the AU Summit begins in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa this morning, with peace and security in the continent topping the agenda. The meeting comes at a time when Nigeria's terror group Boko Haram threatens to the holding of peaceful elections in that country, and when South Sudan is still riddled by war. The 2-day meeting will also elaborate on women empowerment as a theme of the conference.
We cannot stand by when we see girls being kidnapped, boys being killed, people being killed, villages terrorized. We have to act.
While the decline in the number of Ebola cases is seen as a promising development, the medical humanitarian organization MSF has cautioned that the loss of awareness now will jeopardize the progress made in stemming the epidemic. The weekly number of new confirmed Ebola cases has for the first time fallen below 100 since June 2014. It totaled 99 last week, shifting the focus from slowing transmission to ending the epidemic. And Malawi's government is considering how it can better prevent climate-linked disasters. This comes after massive flooding continues to cause havoc in the country. Severe floods across 15 of the country's 28 districts have killed 79 people and left 153 missing. The United Nations Agriculture Agency is working closely with Malawi's government on plans to protect farmers and their land. Flooding has destroyed fields, homes, washed away animals and crops, and threatens local food security. I'll remember all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also keep up to date with all of our journalists across the country on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Thank you, Katrine. Now, old wounds will be reopened as the nation awaits in great anticipation the announcement by Justice Minister Michael Masuta on whether apartheid assassins will be released on parole today. Clive Derby-Lewis, Eugene de Kock and Ferdinand Barnett will know their fate in about an hour's time. The focus will fall on Derby-Lewis, the man convicted for the assassination of struggle stalwart and SACP leader Chris Hani. He's suffering from advanced lung cancer and has been recommended for medical parole. Now, our very own reporter Yolisa Nyamela joins us from Dawn Park in Boksburg, outside the house where Chris Hani was gunned down on the 10th of April in 1993. She is with guests. A very good morning to you, Yolisa. I understand you have guests with you, but before you go, just set the scene for us there, please.
Even I could hardly hear you because there's quite loud noise behind us, as many ANC and SACP members and leaders have converged here. They actually converged here from very early this morning. So you'll understand that there's a mixed kind of feeling when it comes to why they're here. Some of them are here to say in anticipation of the announcement just after 10. Some of them are saying they're here to celebrate the late Chris Hani's legendary performance, or rather contribution to the struggle of this country. We're standing right in front of his house in Boksburg, Don Park. This is, of course, on that fateful day, this is where it all happened. This is where the late Chris Hani was gunned down in cold blood. Many neighbors heard gunshots, several gunshots. Shortly afterwards, they would hear piercing screams of a young lady who was running down the street. That young lady turned out to be Noma Kwezi Hani, who's the daughter of the late Chris Hani. Many of those neighbors went out themselves to find out what was happening. Legendary broadcaster Mamnoxolo Grootboom is one of those neighbors who came out running to find out what was happening. Mamnoxolo, thank you for joining us. And on this day, as we relive that fateful morning on Saturday, the 10th of April 1993, you were one of those neighbors. For those who dare forget, for the Born Frees, for the country at large, if you were to paint a picture for us as a neighbor.
Let me start off by saying, Yolisa, today I'm wearing the very same shirt that I wore on that day. It has never been washed. It was wet with Noma Kwezi's tears. And they dried on this shirt. And I've got this shirt on for young people to say, no matter what happens, tears of an innocent child dried on this shirt. On the street, as we were washing Chris Hani's blood from the driveway, you could see his blood running down the street. It was an unforgettable experience. And it brought the words into action that our struggle has been bought by the lives of so many. Chris Hani's blood ran down the street. The young people must not forget. When they look at this democracy, they must know that it was paid for by precious blood of people, and one of those, of course, is our own neighbor, Chris Hani.
Mamnoxolo, that young lady who had piercing screams that you heard from your house was a young lady by the name of Noma Kwezi Hani, the daughter of the late Chris Hani. If you were to just tell us what you had to do, because you were one of the first people on the scene, and you had to deal with the fact that you had just witnessed firsthand the death of her father.
You know, this is a very difficult part for me, Yolisa, to relive my experience with Noma Kwezi. As I was rushing down my house, when I heard that it was Chris Hani who was gunned down by those shots that I heard, I came out of the house and I heard these piercing screams, this wailing child. And as I was coming out of my house, I saw her running out of her home down the street, and I sprinted after her. She was running like mad, and I caught up with her right at the end of that street. And she came to me and she hugged me and she said to me, Mama, 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 they have killed my father. I took her with me. I almost wanted to carry her. And as we came over this side, I wanted us to go straight to my house. But she dragged me towards Chris Hani's body. And she kept on saying, come, Mama Noxolo, come, Mama Noxolo, come, come, come. And she dragged me until we were standing right over Chris's body. And she said, Mama, they've killed my father. I did not even want to look at him, but she kept on saying, open your eyes, they've killed him. And I looked at Chris Hani. He was soaked in blood. He had a newspaper clutched under his armpit. And I said to her, Nomakwezi, let's go. You don't have to see, you have seen enough. Let us go. And I took her home with me.
But you were also telling me that you literally had to pull her off from her father's body.
I did. It was like she wanted to lie. It was like she wanted to wake him up, you know. Yes, she told me that her daddy was dead. But to me, as I saw her that day, it seemed as though she wanted to breathe life into her father. And I took her home with me, Yolisa. When we got home, I took her to my bedroom, you know. I tried to calm her down. You know, Yolisa, when a person cries so hard and so much that there are no tears anymore, that was that child. And as I got to my bedroom, she got onto my bed and she was jumping up and down. She was still crying, but there were no tears coming out of her eyes. And I asked her for her mom's telephone numbers. And the phone was right next to my bed. And I dialed the numbers as she was giving them to me. I'm sure she gave me 100 numbers at the same time. And no number went through. And then she said, let's go to my house. I will get my mom's diary. Maybe I'm forgetting these numbers, you know. And reluctantly, I did that. But unfortunately, the area was already condoned by police. And we could not go in. And it was then that I saw Tokyo. And she organized transport, and we took her to Tokyo's place.
Well, very few emotive episodes are like this in this country, Ibn. And as you can hear for yourself, quite a riveting story. It gives me goosebumps as well, because as one South African who was not there on that day, but hearing it from one of the neighbors who ran to the house and encountered the child of the late Chris Hani, who would later die as well because of a drug overdose. And some reports attribute that death of Nomakwezi Hani to the stress and the frustration of having witnessed the death of her father firsthand. We'll continue with the story. As you can hear, there was much more that happened on that day until after the announcement, of course, where we will be bringing you all the reactions from this house here in front of the Hani house in Job Park in Boksburg. Back to Auckland Park.
Thank you very much, Yolisa. We'll come back to you for another update a little bit later. Yolisa and Jamela, a very emotive account, very difficult actually to watch and listen to that interview. Such a deeply personal moment and so sad. One of the great leaders of South Africa that was gunned down on that fateful day, the 10th of April, 1993 it was. Now, our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko, joins us now live from Pretoria, where the announcement will be made whether those that plotted or those that killed, assassinated Chris Hani will be released amongst some other apartheid killers. Good morning, Vuyo. Vuyo, can you hear me? Vuyo, if you can hear me, just set the scene for us today.
Well, thanks very much, Ben, and welcome to Pretoria in Hatfield. And this is where in the next, at about just after 10 o'clock, Minister Masuta, who is the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, will be making known his view on whether Mr. Clive Derby Lewis, the man who assassinated, was responsible for the assassination of Chris Hani, who gave the orders to Janus Wallus, whether that man should indeed be paroled on medical grounds. You will, of course, recall that not too long ago, the Medical Parole Board did recommend that Clive Derby Lewis be paroled. He is terminally ill from lung cancer. We were told that one of his lungs was nearly giving in. And given everything that he has done, how he has carried himself, how he has behaved in prison, he is indeed eligible for parole. And from what we are gathering from experts, from what we are gathering from people who are close to this process, it does seem that he will indeed be paroled. Of course, there is a lot at stake. There's a very strong lobby, in particular the South African Communist Party, that believes that he doesn't deserve, he's a murderer, he murdered Chris Hani, and so he should not be paroled. If anything, he should rot in jail. But what the experts and people close to this process are telling us, it is that, well, the minister has to consider the law, and if there was one area or one issue that could turn things the other way, in other words, get the minister not to give him the parole, that would be on medical grounds, whether in fact what the medical parole board relied on is in fact not true, or they didn't do as much work as perhaps they should have done. That is what would change things, and that is the only thing that would guarantee the South African Communist Party and other people who think Clive W. Lewis should not be paroled what they want. But on medical grounds alone, and if everything that has been done so far, and if everything that has been put before the minister is what could be done, in other words, there's really strong medical grounds to deny him, then that it could go that way. But as things stand, and if the medical parole board, what the medical parole board relied on is what anyone who would have looked into this case would have come up with and made the recommendation that the board made, is going to go one way only, and Clive W. Lewis may just be a free man in a few hours from now. Although the same cannot be said with the others, with the prime evil, that remains to be seen as to what the minister will eventually decide. But there too, a lot of people are saying it may just lean on the side of the minister, accepting the minister giving him the parole, and the same would go for the third person that he is going to be looking into this morning. So as things stand right now, Ben, it looks like certainly on the Clive W. Lewis case, he will get that parole. With regard to the others, we will wait and see what the minister has to say just after 10 o'clock, and we will of course be bringing you that live here on Channel 404. And with that, it's back to you, Ben.
Vuyo, can you hear me? Well, it seems as if Vuyo can't hear me. I would have liked for him to paint a picture of where Chris Hani fits in the pantheon, the picture of South African icons, and in my opinion, it's right up there with the Nelson Mandelas of our liberation. Anyhow, let's take a look at some of your tweets, some of your views. What are you thinking about today? Bonolo Tebe says all eyes on the Minister of Justice this morning, no doubt. Clive W. Lewis, prime evil, of course, prime evil being Eugene de Kock, Ferdi Barnard. Masuta must decide wisely now. Vuyo thinks that Clive W. Lewis will be a free man, but the other two might still be in jail. Advocate Maru Moremokolo says remorse and full disclosure are not part of a medical parole application. It's purely based on the health of the prisoner. Hashtag there, Clive W. Lewis. Now, Sisanda M says, imagine I'm having dinner at my favorite restaurant, and next to my table dining as well is Clive W. Lewis, Chris Hani killer. Hashtag I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that as well. I grew up during that time. It was the most difficult times. KwaZulu, Minister Michael Masuta, no parole for Clive W. Lewis. Only the truth will set him free. And then Owen Kosi Butelezi says Clive W. Lewis is an enemy of war. Therefore, he's a war criminal who's never shown remorse for what he did. Let him finish the life sentence. That one from Owen Kosi Butelezi. Now, it is a very emotive day. It's a very difficult day. It's a very difficult day for me. Now we have a viewer tweet of the day here from Brenda Waddle. We must be careful not to allow the hatred with which we were dealt with to destroy our humanity, she says. That's the other side of the coin. from Brenda Wardle. That is hashtag Clive Derby Lewis. Well, the show always goes on. Let's take a look at the front pages from around the globe. What else is happening in the world? In Australia, the Daily Telegraph is reporting that an inquest has heard the Sydney siege gunman ordered the manager of the Lind Cafe that was targeted to kneel on the floor and then shot him in the head. Wow. In the United Kingdom, the Times says there's been a big increase in the religious slaughter of animals. And in the United States, the Wall Street Journal looks at the recent incident in which 2 IDF soldiers were killed and 7 others wounded in a strike in the Hezbollah region. And the paper says this will raise tensions on the Israel-Lebanon border. Some of the headlines from around the world. Here in South Africa, we're waiting for, well, the parole board decision on whether Chris Hani, the killer of Chris Hani, Clive Derby Lewis, should be a free man today. Before we go to an ad break, let's just take a look at some of the other happenings across and outside of the country. Here in Johannesburg, there you have it. Central Energy Fund is expected to release the petrol price for February by statement. Let's hope it comes down again. Staying in the City of Gold, in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court sitting at the High Court in Johannesburg, the trial of George Luca, accused of the murder of Teaser's boss, Lolly Jackson, continues. And in Ethiopia, President Jacob Zuma leads a delegation to the 24th ordinary session of the African Union Assembly. Now, this channel will keep you updated on that, throughout the entire plenary. You're watching Newsroom. We will be back with more after a short little break.
Cameroon's economic capital, a unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.
If I'm telling you, you don't like it, I call it defeat.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Burning tyres and riots have become all too familiar around campuses in South Africa at the start of every academic year, it seems. Now, lack of student funding seems to be at the heart of every protest. Since the NSFAS inception in 1999, over 1 million people have benefited from the scheme. It is estimated between 8 and 9 billion rand has fallen into the wrong hands. Money which the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, seeks to recover. This year, the government scheme will provide loans and bursaries totaling 9.5 billion rand. But critics believe it's not enough, with student leaders calling for a review of it. Now, from the NSFAS is the CEO, Mr. Msulwa Daka. He joins us in Cape Town. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ivan, and good morning to the viewers and your guests.
And the South African Student Congress President, Ntuthuko Makomboti, is with us in the studio. Yeah, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Almost thought you weren't going to join us this morning.
No, we are here.
It's big sums of money, and it seems as if there are massive issues at the heart of this matter. I want to go to the CEO in Cape Town. Just give us your views, and then give us an idea about recouping this money. What are your ideas on this?
Thanks, Ibn. I think we all agree that the substantial increases that we have seen over the last few years in student financial aid. But having said that, it looks like also the demand has also increased, and therefore we are struggling to cope with everyone that needs assistance. From a recovery perspective, though, we are focusing this year on recoveries because we think it's an area where we can improve the money that comes back to the students. This year alone, we will be funding more than 10,000 students from recoveries alone, just from money that we got from previous students that were funded by the scheme. It is something that we think is important, and it needs to continue growing because it's 10,000 students that would not have been funded should we have not recovered money. We think that we can do more. We are pushing, we're meeting with big employers of former students to try and have a system of collecting money via the payroll systems of the various employers.
What are your views as the students themselves? You seem to be at odds with officialdom at the start of every year. What are your views with regards to this, and how do you view the missing funds?
Look, we are in support of the call for those who have benefited from NSFAS to be able to pay back so that more students can benefit. We think that a lot more money can still be recovered. As the CEO is saying, 10,000 students this year. We could do much better because the recovery rate is actually quite low. So we support the campaign, and we, as SASCO, have been all out saying wherever we get a platform that people who have benefited from NSFAS should repay the money. We are saying that some of the monies that, for instance, are missing, as we are talking about, due to corrupt practices that are happening, where people who don't qualify to benefit are benefiting, is due to the challenge we have with the missing middle. Children of public servants, teachers, nurses, and police who don't qualify to benefit from NSFAS because of the threshold, but yet can't afford the high cost. So as the investigation is happening, we think that also we need to be talking quite seriously about the question of how do we fund the missing middle.
Mr. Daka, if I can come back to you in Cape Town, the missing funds, could we see a possible prosecution of students and financial aid officers who are found guilty of defrauding the system and benefiting themselves and their families, and we hear about favors for aid and all kinds of underhanded tactics?
Eben, from our side, we're very clear that everyone who has been guilty of wrongdoing must be dealt with appropriately. If there's someone who has benefited inappropriately from the fund, therefore the measures must be taken to deal with those people. The Department of Higher Education and Training, through the Minister and the Director General, has called for a system-wide investigation or forensic audit so that we can understand some of the bad practices that are taking place in the system. We are in full support of that system, and I know the student organizations are also in full support of that investigation so that we can weed all forms of wrongdoing in the system. We have also been happy to say that there has been support from student organizations on our recovery initiatives, and some of them have even said they are prepared to do something and even prop up our ability to recover and fundraise. The question of the missing middle that Ntutuko is raising, it is something that we're also looking at to see what can we do for those families that are not rich enough to be able to afford university education, but might not be poor enough to be able to qualify for the bulk of the products that the scheme is running. We are busy doing a research project with some of the state institutions, especially we have roped in the government employees pension fund, which we think is an important stakeholder in that process.
The old system versus the new system. Are you happy with the new system, or would you like to see a hybrid of the old system? It seems as if the students were happier under the old system. Would that be accurate?
Well, we are the ones, in fact, SASCO, who called for NSFAS offices in our institutions. We are the ones who said students need to be able to interact directly with their loan provider, which is NSFAS.
Yeah.
Because one of the challenges we identified was that institutions were administering the scheme in different ways. It was not being administered seamlessly and in the same way, and not even keeping with the policy of NSFAS. So this is the new system that is being piloted is as a result of some of the struggles that we have been engaged in. But as a nature of any pilot, you would identify challenges, and we have been in engagement with NSFAS to try and resolve some of the issues together with universities. So we do confront some challenges because mainly the system is it's an electronic system, but there are some issues that relate to how do students, for instance, appeal and so on. And those are matters that NSFAS and the universities are now trying to resolve, and how the university also can play a role in terms of the appeals. And also NSFAS is saying, we met them at the beginning of this year, they are saying that they are also looking into ensuring that they have got already permanent NSFAS officers in the institution so that students can be able to communicate. So we believe that as we pilot it, we will be able to find more solutions to the system.
Mr. Daka, the final remarks come from you. I want you to respond to that request. And then I also want to talk about the recovery system and how long this process is going to run and what do you expect to get out of it.
Let me start with the second part, Eben. The recovery process is an ongoing process. Remember, we continue to issue loans year in and year out. Therefore, recovery for us is a lifelong process for the scheme. We are, however, wanting to prop up the recovery so that our base is higher than what it is. We will continue to recover. What we like about recovery is the sustainable form of funding. They are more predictable than most of the other forms of funding. We know that we will continue to have students joining the workforce each and every year, and therefore we'll continue to fund a new group of students. But on the new model and the placement of students at campuses, we have started this year to place our people at various campuses. It's more on a pilot basis. We'll have to work with the university so they can provide us with office space so that we can have someone who's permanently placed in some of the campuses. We are happy with what we have seen with the new model. As Ntutuko has said, it's a new system. There's been some challenges that were encountered in year one. We are now in year two of the implementation, and we expect a much more robust system that will also help us to root out some of the problems that we have encountered in the old system.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that contribution, and thank you for joining us today. That is the CEO of student funding agency NSFAS here in South Africa, Mr. Msulwa Daka. Ntutuko Mwagomboti, who is the president of COSAS. Thank you very much for joining us today as well here in the studio here in Johannesburg. Let's move on and take a look at some of your tweets. What are you talking about on Twitter this morning? Of course, there's a massive story going on. That was yesterday's story in Bedfordview. We had a shootout. 7 people were shot at a shopping mall. Another dark day for Bedfordview. I don't think we can afford any more bad press, says Lucky. Jillian Penalunya says, thank God my special friends and family in Bedfordview are okay. Been worried sick all morning. Christoph Adelberg says, people are desperate, impoverished and disempowered. Crime, albeit unjustifiable, is often their only hope of survival. And that is a very sober view from Christoph Adelberg this morning. Often we try and demonize criminals, but we live in desperate times. It doesn't justify anyone killing anybody, but crime will be with us until we close the gap between rich and poor, not just in our country, but all around the world. Now, on that story, a manhunt is underway for the armed robbers that attacked cash in transit security guards in that shopping center in Bedfordview, Johannesburg, yesterday. They forced the mall security guards to open the gates of the Bedford Center at gunpoint. It was. They then confronted the cash in transit guards who were collecting cash inside of the center. A shootout followed and 7 people, including 3 bystanders, 2 guards and 2 robbers, were wounded in the attack. The others made off with an undisclosed amount of cash. Today's picture comes from Pumlani Dube, and its caption, What awaits Bafana? Now, here in South Africa, we can be very harsh on our national teams. There's a Shambok waiting for them at the airport and a couple of Pangas as far as I can see. Now, Phumlani Dube might be putting that up in jest, but I think there are some European-based players that went straight to Europe. They're not going to come to Joburg. Of course, the latest is that Bafana will now only arrive back tomorrow. They were expected today, but if you look at that picture, it's a rather heated welcoming that awaits them. Shamboks and Pangas, what do you think? At SABC Newsroom, send us your views. We'll be back with you after a short break.
Zoom into Africa. This is Sierra Leone. The president is Mr. Ernest Bai Koroma. Sierra Leone got independent from the United Kingdom on 27 April in 1961. The population is more than 6 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Leone.
Well, hello and welcome back here with Newsroom. Let's just take a look at the top stories this morning. Justice and Correctional Services Minister Michael Masuta will announce this morning whether Clive Derby-Lewis, who was the brain behind the killing of SACP Secretary General Chris Hani, will be released on medical parole or not. Two other high-profile apartheid criminals, former Vlak Plaas Commander Eugene de Kock and Ferdinand Barnard, will also know their fate today. Reactions have been mixed after the recommendations for parole were made earlier this week by the Medical Parole Board. The SACP remain hopeful that Masuta will not accept the recommendation. The Malamulele Pastors Forum and community members have expressed disappointment after police prevented them from holding a night vigil to pray for the positive response from the Municipal Demarcation Board about the demand to have their own municipality. It was meant to pray for a response from the board about the demand to have Malamulele granted a separate municipality from Thulamela. The board is expected to release its final report on Malamulele to the Malamulele task team members in Polokwane today. And the 24th session of the AU summit begins in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa this morning, with peace and security in the continent topping the agenda. The two-day meeting will also elaborate on women empowerment as a theme of the conference. Well, remember, we're keeping you up to date on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. You can also get all of the top stories, all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. Yeben, back to you.
Thanks, Katrina. Now, the month of January is at an end, and the year of 2015 is well on its way. It's already been a jam-packed news month locally and internationally. We saw news stories on social media develop into debates about race, religion, conflict, violence, you name it. It's all been in this first month. Now, to wrap it all with us today is Roy Africa Managing Director Tonya Khoury, is always on top of what's going on all around the world. Good morning, Tonya. Nice to see you again.
Good morning, Evan. Good to be here.
What a hectic start to the year, wasn't it?
Can you believe it? And we're already at the end of January. How did that happen? It seems to have flown by, and there's been so much jam-packed news into 30-odd days. It's been incredible, absolutely incredible.
I'm ready to put the Christmas trimmings up already.
I'm feeling older, Evan.
Yeah, absolutely. But just tell us the top trending stories that kicked off the year. I know there was so much, but what were the big ones?
Well, overseas internationally was obviously the Charlie Hebdo story. I mean, that was one of the biggest stories the world's ever seen. I still am startled by the contrast between that and the Boko Haram stories. But so that was the big one. But here at home, we've had a lot of news this side. Bafana topping the bill in Eskom. Those are our two big stories in January. Bafana, it was so interesting to watch how people were rallied behind the team, and there was so much positive press going out there. And game 11, it started to dwindle. Game 12, it turned into vitriol, and game 13, it was game over for Bafana.
It's game over for Bafana, and in a way, it sort of puts in the picture how South Africans and how we support our national teams and how we support these kind of tournaments. I'm sure there's going to be very much less press in the next week on the AFCON tournaments. It's almost like it didn't happen.
Didn't even happen. Yeah, but it's sad. I saw one tweet in particular that made me laugh. It said, Proteas love us, Springboks love us, but Bafana, they don't love us.
we see these wonderful pictures of a very young Bafana side. Is there a sense that, in a way, even in jest, the supporters have now turned against this team a little bit?
They have, and I find it so tragic because we rallied behind them so nicely, and there was so much positive media out there, and literally within 2 to 3 days, the whole thing came crashing down. People are saying that our management team are in denial, and like people are being lambasted. And I think you carried something earlier with people with pangas and shambos.
Yeah, that's kind of the stuff that goes out on social media. I think we need to cut them a little bit of slack. I think that it's a young team developing, and hopefully we can, if we support them, they'll do very well for us in the future. I think us going there thinking that we could win this tournament was just wrong. But let's move on. Eskom must be taking an absolute beating. Shame. What about the war room stories that I've seen? They've got a war room and they've got all kinds of stuff, but people are just
But we're still in darkness. So, you may have your war room, but we're still in darkness. People are so cross, Eben. So what we did was we broke down Eskom, because it's such a big story, and it accounted for almost 25% of our news, almost 40% of our social media. So we broke it down, and a whopping 53% people are referring to load shedding.
Load shedding, is that the buzzword?
That is the buzzword. But 3 times out of every 100 times, they're not referring to Eskom, they're referring to Eskom.
Eskom.
So they've developed their own little brand name now outside of their...
I've seen that. Why is Cyril Ramaphosa being mentioned?
He came in and said he was going to have a look at it, and this was earlier in the month, obviously.
Of course.
And so he said we're going to sort it out. And then, of course, we had apartheid being blamed, so that came in at 6.12%. And now the cash shortage and bailout combined come in at about 14% of the conversation online. And the power stations, this constant reference to this one didn't make it today and this one's not working today, and people are just so angry. And I'm one of them, I must admit.
I think everyone's angry. We see it happening in the streets as well. I wanted to talk to you about the story that I thought was big the last couple of weeks, the looting that happened, the attack. Some say it's xenophobia, some say no, it's criminality, and so forth, and they sort of juxtapose against it. How has that gone in the media?
The Soweto story was a big one. The Soweto looting story was a big one. And as you rightly say, it raised these issues of xenophobia, of youth crime amongst the youth particularly. People saying that, I think they interviewed a couple of people that were involved in the looting, saying that they were just hungry, felt a little bit entitled. So that came in as one of the big stories in social media, particularly over the past month. But nothing half as big as Bafana, Eskom, and AFCON. In fact, AFCON was so big that we did another graphic and we took it out because it sort of skewed the perception. Because there's other massive stories that were reported on, like this Jackie Celebi's death. Also Zelda Lagrange's Twitter rant, that made quite big news as well. Bedford View Shopping Centre, and of course today's big story, the potential medical parole of Clive Derby-Lewis.
What are people saying about that?
Oh, it's very mixed. Some people are saying, like, we think it's time. We're a forgiving country. Other people are saying, it's going to cause big ripples. Other people are nervous. Me personally, I'm watching with bated breath. I don't know how you feel, Urban. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sort of right down the middle, mixed, because I really revered Chris Hani as one of our great leaders and a true icon of our struggle, and I believe that maybe our country would have looked a little bit different if Chris Hani was around today. But that's my view on it. Whether there should be parole or not, I don't think people really care about my opinion. I'll keep that one close to my chest.
Well, we've seen a lot of convergence as well between the Jackie Salebi story and the Clive Derby-Lewis story coming together in the same platform, which is quite interesting from a media monitor's perspective to watch.
Well, Tonya, it's always nice to talk to you and see what people are talking about, what people are passionate about. That's how the media works now. It's a lot different from when we were young.
Less of a we, Eben.
Thank you. Thanks, Tonya. Tonya Kuri, always good for a giggle and a laugh here as we look at these very weighty issues, man. Weighty issues, real stuff, you know. Here's some comments. Mosi Manegape Mabote says, wish the AU Summit doesn't adopt the nomination of His Excellency Robert Mugabe as the new chair. Zim needs his elder attention for future leadership and stability. Well, there's also mixed reaction on that. UN Women Africa says, we have to defend our children. His Honourable Hinda Devi, First Lady of Chad. Yes. Kyoko Joseph says, West and Southern African states are not likely to support mass exodus of African countries from the Hague-based criminal court. Yes, that is a fact. And that is, of course, a big story. Of course, is the summit going on. Some weighty issues that have to be discussed. One of those is, of course, that's been decided is that His Excellency, President Robert Mugabe, will be the next chair of the AU. But that is much more of a ceremonial role for those of you that understand the machinations of the African Union. Issues that need to be dealt with are war, Boko Haram, Ebola. South Africa have some issues. But we're going to look at something on a lighter note now. Lobola, or bride price, is a South African tradition that, well, as African custom whereby the man pays the family of his fiancée for her hand in marriage to build the relationship between the two families. Now, tapping into the tradition, Robert Matsaneng released his free Lobola calculator app using variables such as height, weight, size, age, how attractive you are, employment status, qualifications, and if the woman has children or not, to calculate how much the bride is worth. Now, it caused so much of a stir on social media. We just had to bring Robert in here today to debrief him quickly on all the trouble that is caused for a lot of people this week. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
There we go. That's nice. Thanks for joining us. Just tell us how this thing works, because a lot of consternation has been caused, especially on my team, with the women wanting to know how much they are worth.
And the men? What about the men?
I was found out. For both. I only came out with 3 cars, and that's what I will take issue with you.
3 cars, you'll have a bride, man. 3 cars.
But tell us how the whole thing fits together before you tell us about your inspiration.
Sure. How it calculates?
Yes.
I can't really go into detail because that's the juice, that's the magic. But like you said, it takes a couple of variables, works out an algorithm, and gives you a value.
Okay, now the app asks for a woman's measurements.
Sure, and a man's?
And a man's.
Yes.
But now, the way I have the issue with you, who decides? Is it the needs of a female in the case of a man? Because it looks like it's just the needs of a man in this case, when you talk about measurements, height, and so forth.
Sure.
When you're dealing with the 3 cars that your app gave to me,
sure.
Does that mean I'm over the hill? I'm done and dusted?
It means your BMI is not so great.
So thank you, thank you,
that opens up a lot of things.
Can we get a next interview in already? No, I'm just joking. There's been a lot of fun around it in South Africa.
For sure. But that's my intention.
And your intention was to have fun and not to replace true cultural protocols.
Not at all.
How has it been received by the traditionalists, if I may ask that?
Not too well by the traditionalists. Not too well. I think I really appreciate you guys having me so I can make my intentions clear.
Yes.
I think it was my intentions that they're not so sure about.
Now, just before we carry on, I just want we took all members of our team,
and
this is what we scored on the
And you're the
Lobola
lowest.
calculator. Yes,
Yeah.
I unfortunately score the lowest because I'm obviously I have the most children and the most experience. But your calculator doesn't work with experience. See, Melanie's worth 11 cows.
Yeah.
Which which for me is a bit dodgy, and Lindo's worth 9 cows.
How's it dodgy?
Well, I mean, I know
You're
them
angry because
personally.
you're last. That's the problem.
I know them personally. I was very unhappy with this Lobola calculator.
I'm sorry, man.
Because I'm obviously used goods, you know.
No, don't put it that way.
Used goods.
Don't put it that way. No, man.
So tell us.
It just means someone has paid Lobola for you before. So.
Somebody's paid Lobola for me.
Sure,
Maybe
sure.
in the previous life.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
exactly.
I should speak to the ancestors. Maybe they can come and
Get your money back.
Come and
Sure.
give me a refund on this whole thing. But it's caused quite a stir here in South Africa. People have absolutely loved it the last couple of weeks. They've had a lot of fun with it.
Sure.
Tell us about the reception and how this kind of struck you with maybe, I think maybe you're a little bit surprised with the kind of reception
you've had. A little bit
had.
is an understatement, man. I was quite shocked. Because I was just working and I started getting these emails. And it was a slow pace, then boom, TV. And then it got real. Then I realized that I can't just leave it alone. I do need to put an update out there, make it more fun and exciting. So that's what I'm busy with now. And also making an iPhone version.
An iPhone version of the Lobola calculator.
Yes. I've been getting a lot of requests for an iPhone version.
But now, how do you then monetize this? How do you make a little bit of money? Because, you know, we can't be working for charity forever.
Well, here's the thing that you mentioned, charity. I'm taking out the iPhone version and the Android version. And on the Android version, I'm going to put some ads in. On the iPhone version, it's going to be for sale. Nothing more than $10. But half of those proceeds I'll be donating to a charity. So it would be nice if I could get the same support.
And that's why you created this app?
I created it just to practice, just to have fun, just to do something uniquely South African. But the people have taken it there, so I feel that's what I should do. And like I said, half the proceeds will go to a charity.
Well, that's a fantastic initiative that you put together.
Sure,
and
I'll be daring you guys to broadcast your Lobola calculation, and it'll come with a bit of a surprise as well.
But can't I organize that you give me a better score, man? I must get a better score.
I'll organize for you.
Eh?
I'll organize.
Okay.
Where it says age, just put in even.
Okay, cool.
A million, guaranteed.
Thank you. That's Robert Matseneng, the creator of the Lobola app. It's caused quite a stir. I think it's fantastic. It's been a lot of fun in all the offices around the country. Very well done, and fantastic on the initiative to let the proceeds go to charity.
Sure.
That's the kind of great South Africans that we need in order to build our country. Robert, fantastic. Good job.
Thank you.
Lobola calculator. If you haven't tried the app yet, you should. It's a whole lot of fun. You can have a bit of giggle in your family, with your friends, even in the workplace. We've had a lot of fun with it this week, and now suddenly there's a new hierarchy that's developing in the office. Robert, now your phone is ringing, man.
Sorry, it's an alarm.
Oh, it's an alarm. Oh, you sleep this late in the morning then?
No, it's an alarm to eat.
Oh, it's an alarm to eat.
Yeah.
He's so skinny, he needs an alarm.
Exactly.
He needs an alarm.
I'm always working,
Okay.
so I need to
now,
remember
Robert,
to
you
eat.
see, now you're teaching me something new. You know, us bigger guys, we don't need an alarm to eat. It's kind of the stomach grumbles and you eat. But
That's your alarm.
That's where we wrap Newsroom today. Bit of fun here at the back end of a Friday. Enjoy the weekend. It's been another cracking week. We'll see you next week at SABC Newsroom. If you have any questions, any ideas, send it to us. We love your interactions. We love your pictures. We love you to be part of our show. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with our entire show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.